joint problem solving. Sorry, I moved a little bit too far up. A collaborative approach to negotiation strives to convert individual wants into a single problem, bringing both parties together to work on solving the problem. The theory stems from the notion that by converting individual positions, wants, and desires into separated problems, the negotiators are able to free themselves of any jealousy or personal attachment to their requirements in order to make a more objective and equitable position to collaborate from. And it's kind of a divide and conquer. We've kind of consolidated things. We have three things we've got to work on. Everybody's issues are being dealt with. It's a good situation. Any questions on that? Okay. So now let's move on to some of the other terms mentioned here. The power of competition. You see, I took a whole bunch of different websites. Here we go back to Peter Stark companies. Competition. Basically, in most businesses, the power of competition can be devastating. The seller who knows that a customer can easily go to competition for the same product or services has to justify everything and may end up giving away more than originally planned. Just the threat of competition could be enough to force concessions. So, for example, you want to negotiate a raise. You come in and say, hey, boss, can I have a raise? I did a very good job. And I've seen this. They'll say, I know you do a good job. But times are really hard, and we appreciate it. We'll come back to me in 6 weeks, and you say, 6 weeks is a long time. I'm going to be honest with you. There are other people out there that are willing to pay more. And then the guy says, oh yeah, well then go ahead, go to the other company. I said, well, it's kind of ironic. I did get a job offer somewhere else, and then I'm like, ooh, all of a sudden you said something. And whenever you have that to hang over someone's head, it could be effective. Sometimes it's not. I remember one time I worked for someone who was very difficult to work for. And, I mentioned to him that I got another job offer. And he didn't say, well, what do they offer you? He was like, okay, so good luck. I was just curious to see if he would even bite and say, well, I don't want to lose you. None of that. He said, yeah, it's okay. Good luck. I said, I'd like to give you 2 weeks notice. And of course he was prideful. He goes, no, you can leave now. And he went to the safe, took out a check, wrote me out a check for whatever money he owed me. He sent me on my way. He felt kind of like, oh yeah, look tough guy. And what ended up happening was a couple of months later, he called me back, not to call me back to work for him, but to apologize and said that he didn't treat me right and come to his house and wanted to give me a bonus check for something that I did for him. But again, that negotiation, I really wasn't trying to negotiate for a higher salary, because even if he would have given it to me, I didn't want to work for him because I felt that he didn't value me as a person or as an employee. But the point is that could be used as a negotiation platform. Any questions? Anybody? Okay.
But it only works if you have a job, right? I mean,
yeah. I mean,
otherwise you'd be.
If you look, you have to be prepared. It's a game of poker. You have to be prepared. If you say, others are willing to pay more, you have to be prepared to say, well, then, by all means, go look for another job. Then I have no problem with you leaving. You have to be you have to be ready for that. And if that he does or she does say that, you have to be ready and say, okay. That's why it's always better when you have a job offer, a firm job offer. You come in, not arrogant, and say, listen, I really like to work here, if that is the case. Or, but in order for me to work here, I have to feel good about myself, and I have to come home with a paycheck that reflects my true abilities, and I don't feel that's happening right now. So, and I had that at work where a certain employee got a massive raise because they mentioned to their manager that they were contacted by another organization. That was enough to just immediately seal the deal. And had I just said, listen, I need more money, I'm working so hard, I can't make it, maybe he'd give me a couple of bucks, but he wouldn't have given me, when you have a firm offer or a firm thing that says, what, we got some serious, what's the word I'm looking for? Serious leverage here. With that serious leverage, you could really, 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 really do a lot. Okay. Splitting the difference, we mentioned that already. We don't have to do that. So let's get back to the PowerPoint slide. Anybody have any questions? No? Okay. We're almost done. Okay, so we did this slide. We go on to the next slide. Variables that affect negotiation, the nature of the issues being negotiated, how serious they are, how much they matter to each person, the context of the environment. Is it a stressful environment? the outcomes desired. What are those outcomes? What are those things that you want to be able to basically come away with? Some negotiation outcomes, substantive outcomes, have to do with how the specific issue is settled. And sometimes we look at the relationship, negotiating in a manner designed to maintain good relations between the parties, regardless of the substantive results and those the outcomes itself. That word is misspelled. In other words, sometimes you want to have a negotiation and one person's going to win, but you have to be very careful because sometimes you could win and sometimes you could lose. Meaning, you could win the battle but lose the war. Especially true in family negotiations. This could definitely come up where your daughter gets engaged to somebody, and you have to start negotiating about the wedding and who buys this and who buys that. If you're always going to want to win, ultimately your relationships with the other side will deteriorate. So sometimes you have to just give in just for the sake of peace and for the sake of maintaining that relationship. Why? Because the wedding plans are for a wedding. That'll happen once, hopefully, never again, and that's it. It's over. But then if you ruin that relationship in the preparation for that wedding, it'll be almost impossible to regain it later on. If you want to nurture that feeling, that good feeling, you have to create that good feeling from the onset and preserve it. And trust me, I know what I'm talking about. I am blessed that I have excellent relationships with my children's parents, in-laws, and I think partially because when I negotiate with them, it's more of, would it be possible? I nibble a lot. And nibbling, I feel, really, really works a lot because it's not in your face and it's a nice way to go about getting things done. Increasing negotiation effectiveness. Willem Mastenbroek proposed 4 activities: obtaining substantial results, influencing the balance of power in your favor, promoting a constructive climate, of course, and obtaining procedural flexibility, which is important for future operations. And using third parties, sometimes you could do this through mediation. Mediation is just somebody who's just a mediator. He'll listen to both sides, but it's not binding. Arbitration is binding. And I took the liberty here to look at these 2 terms, conciliation and consultation. Let me just find them over here. Okay. Conciliation. All right, 1 second. Consolation is the act of stopping someone from being angry. Placation. You calm them down, which is a very, very good way of dealing with things. Okay, and then the other one is consultation. And consultation is, I went all the way to the UK. I will skip the British accent. This is warwickshire.gov.uk. So consultation and negotiation. If you are a manager, it is important that you understand the differences between the 2 processes and the situations in which either should be applied. However, whichever process is being used, you should seek advice and or assistance with the HR advisory service beforehand. Negotiation requires both parties to reach agreement on the issues concerned and is generally a more demanding exercise than consultation. A negotiated settlement is usually necessary where substantive changes to terms and conditions are being sought. Meaning really, really meat and potatoes important things are being sought. The only alternative being to agree such changes on an individual basis with those concerned. However, such negotiations do not succeed depending upon the strength of the case for the changes sought. It may be possible to effect changes unilaterally. Excuse me. In such circumstances, the reasonable outcome of such unilateral variation will be judged by whether a genuine attempt at negotiated settlement was made. So there was a good faith attempt that'll make a big difference. Consultation does not require agreement, but does involve genuinely seeking the views and considerations of other people. By and large, measuring changes which are likely to affect employees should be subject to consultation. If you want to have a negotiation, sometimes you have to consult an expert in order to really, and when people see you consulting somebody else, they like, okay, you're humble. You're really trying to do what's best for everyone. When it's unilateral, it's not a good situation. All right, we're almost done here. Negotiation globally. Negotiating with individuals from different countries and cultures poses issues, of course. people from other cultures negotiate differently. The Japanese emphasizes a win-win approach. Americans are very candid and specific, and also playing a role. Political systems, legal policies, ideology, and traditions all play a role with global negotiations. Exhibit 11.5 is a graph about cultural effects on negotiating style. You could see that for yourself. I don't need to read that. You could read that on your own. And tonight, we explained the contemporary perspective on conflict. We described the causes of intergroup conflict. We identified several consequences of dysfunctional intergroup conflict, compared approaches for managing conflict through resolution, summarized how organizations stimulate constructive intergroup conflict, and understand the differences between win-win and win-lose negotiations, give examples of different types of negotiation tactics, and we explain how negotiation effectiveness can be increased. Okay, thank you for joining the video.